written: critique of pure reason, critique of practical reason, and critique of judgment. And you defined critique as an intense intellectual engagement that discusses the scopes and limitations uh, of a particular thing. So, if we're talking about critique of pure reason, it entails the scope and limitations of reasons. Uh, the context in which this is written is, I mean, it is applied to Newtonian physics.
Correct.
Uh, so, like Newton had all these laws and all of that at that point of, I mean, that is what it is related to. That reason is related to Newtonian physics.
Right.
And reason is seen as a faculty of human knowledge. Uh, then we also, like you had shared your screen uh, and the text that we were seeing. We saw three questions that Kant tries to answer or raise. The
Right.
first is, what can I know?
Mm.
And I think it corresponds to the three critiques that he has written,
Mm.
respectively. What can I know? What should I know? And the third one, what may I hope?
Mm. What should I do is the second question, right?
What should I do? Sorry. What should I do? Yes, what should I do? Then we spoke about, then we sort of revised what the rationalist and empiricist debate is all about.
Mm. Mm.
And that actually is incorporated in what epistemology is. So,
Mm.
epistemology, like we talked about, uh, can mean. Third question is, what may I hope?
Right.
Epistemology, like, how do I know that this is something? For instance, you talked about a pen. Like, how do I know that this is a pen?
Mm.
But there is other the other counterpart of it is ontology, which
Mm.
talks about the ultimate reality, which talks about the essence, like what is this pen, or what is this object? Not focusing on the how, but the what. So then we talked about epistemology and the what rationalist and empiricist debate is all about. How Descartes, like we had discussed earlier, was a rationalist, and his line of thought was, I mean, his way of getting knowledge was through rationalism. It was deductive in nature, based on an idea which already exists, and then
Mm.
deducting knowledge out of it. Whereas empiricist, we talked about how Bacon was an empiricist. So, empiricism talks about how knowledge can only be gained through senses and experiences. So that is an experiential knowledge, and that is inductive in nature. Uh, we then also then we talked about these things in a bit of detail by giving certain propositions, certain statements. So yes, the first one was the rationalist that we talked about. So like, this is a pen is a proposition. So it is something which need not be experimented, need not be uh, checked. It is something universal. It does not require empirical verification. Just all bachelors are unmarried. That does not require any
Uh,
empirical verification.
this is a pen is a kind of statement that is verified a posteriori, right? In the sense
Yes,
that you need to really check whether it is a pen or not, right?
yes,
A posteriori would be which requires verification through your senses, smell, touch, sight. So
yes.
the
I
pen
misspoke with
requires, yeah, yeah.
yes. All bachelors are unmarried. That was what priori was. That propositions that do not require empirical verification. One need not go to every single bachelor to check if that is that person is married or not. It is. It is an analytical statement that does not require empirical verification, and that knowledge is called a priori, which is universal and can also be termed as trivial. Whereas when we spoke about empiricism, so the example that Sir gave was Bill Clinton was president in 1999. Now, that is something which would require verification. And is that knowledge is called posteriori because it has we come to know that after having verified or after experiencing it or after making sure that that is true. So it is inductive in that sense and necessary instead of as opposed to trivial, which comes in rationalism. The third one that we talked about entails both. So this example, the sum of all angles of a triangle is 180-degree. It is both a priori and also like a synthetic statement. Uh, Synthetic in the sense that it has attributes of empiricism embedded in it as well. So both A and B in that sense. So it is synthetic because it is like additional to the knowledge, to the already existing knowledge that we have of a triangle if we take this example further. And it is particular in that sense and not um, universal, I think. I'm not quite sure about this. So this is what we
What
discussed.
you are not sure about this is
Sir, it is particular, right?
hmm, particular
Yeah.
in the sense that uh, Bill Clinton was president of the United States in 1999 is a specific instance, particular instance. In
Yes.
2021, it's Joe Biden, right?
Hmm.
So it's a specific thing. That's what we mean by particular. As against general, like all bachelors are unmarried, is a general kind of universal kind of statement. So universal, particular, that kind of distinction is at
And
work.
so triangle example, all angles, sum of all angles of a triangle is
Ah,
180-degree. We call
hmm,
it synthetic. So
right.
synthetic too. So in that sense, is it particular that statement, the third one?
Uh, it is particular and universal at the same time, right? It is
Okay.
synthetic as well as a priori. It is synthetic a priori, right? So it's a unique kind of knowledge, and that is the kind of knowledge that science and mathematics makes available to us. So uh, that is so Kant's philosophy is trying to figure out what makes this kind of knowledge possible, right? Which is both universal and particular, which is a priori at the same time synthetic, right? And other examples are F is equal to ma, light bends due to gravity. Now, light bends due to gravity was discovery of Albert Einstein, and it was done mathematically, right? Uh, so, uh, what you have to get here is that this was proved almost 6 to 7 decades after Einstein died. It was proved recently empirically when science could devise tools to find out how light deflects. And the experiment that they did was at the time of solar eclipse, right? Where they could prove that light is bent because of the moon. very minute kind of deflection was observed. So knowledge does not, this kind of knowledge does not require empirical verification, right? So that is the kind of knowledge that Kant tries to explain. How do we get that kind of knowledge? Coming back to Smith's question, we did discuss subject predicate, but Kant's philosophy does not lay much emphasis on grammar and language. The linguistic turn in philosophy, Smith and Stubben both, is emerging in middle of 20th century, right? Especially with Heidegger, Wittgenstein, and others. Right? That becomes a kind of major development in language as philosophy. Later, Derrida, right? Like Smith. So there is subject predicate discussion that we touched upon, but it does not become important part of his philosophy. Okay, so what makes this kind of knowledge available according to Kant is that reasoning and the laws of nature, right, both would have a kind of pre-existing common ground or set of common condition. There should be something shared between the human faculty of knowing and nature, right? And this kind of existing ground has to be presupposed, or what we call, it should be assumed a priori. And this ground is what Kant means by transcendental, right? And that is given on page 362. So these kind of statements, like scientific ones, are what he calls amplitative. That means they increase our knowledge. Page 362. Right? And he says that this a priori assumption, a priori grounds are to be assumed beforehand. We make a distinction between subject and object, knower and the known. Unse, before we start thinking about knower and the known, subject and the object, you have to assume that there is a common ground which transcends both, right? The knower and the known. And this assumption, right, and this common ground is what he calls purposiveness, right? So is that much clear to you? Any questions about what we have discussed till now? Titiksha has summarized it very well, right? Very good summarization of that thing. Any doubts about this? Because this is very abstract. And we are not, what should I say, habituated to think in very abstract terms, which philosophy is very often, right? So many of you would find it boring or even difficult, right? How many of you found this conversation difficult, technical conversation that we have been having to understand?
Sir, I would say me, but then again, I heard only 15 minutes of yesterday's lecture, so.
Okay. You can watch that video again, but Titiksha has again summarized it very well.
Yes, sir. So would you please repeat what term was given to the common grounds that?
That common ground, which he calls transcendental, means it has to be beyond knower and the known.
Yes.
And this transcendental ground is called purposiveness or harmony between human faculty of knowing and nature, right? So reason in some way is transcendental, right? And because this nature is transcendental, you can get this kind of knowledge. What kind of knowledge? All angles of the triangle, sum of all angles of the triangle is 180 degrees, or F is equal to MA, or that light bends because of gravity, right? So that is called purposiveness, and it is a transcendental ground of reason. So reason occupies a kind of transcendental ground. Is that much clear now? नहीं तो अगर ये हम assume ना कर ले, if we don't assume this a priori as a transcendental ground, then how is it that nature obeys these laws, like laws of thermodynamics, right? Have you heard of this? Laws of thermodynamics? Those who had science may remember
Yes,
something.
yes, we have.
Whether it's law of thermodynamics or laws of motion, how does nature obey these laws, right? Which are actually derived from rational thinking, right? As well as observation. So how is it that nature each and every time seems to follow these laws, right? Unless there is a common ground that is shared by nature and human being, human mind, right? Human mind and nature need to have a common ground which is beyond both human mind and nature, right? And that is what we mean by transcendental, not to be confused with spiritual meaning of word transcendental here, right? So Titiksha says Plotinus was more difficult. Okay, you found it interesting though difficult. Yes, because very interestingly, reasoning seems to be now put on pedestal, right? Rationality, especially scientific rationality, has got a kind of place of almost divine pedestal pe aa gaya reason, right? You can see how there is an implicit valorization of scientific rationality. And as somebody was pointing out, let me see who pointed out. Yeah, Jaldi was saying that industrial revolution and the industrial middle class values are at the heart of this. It's a bourgeois philosophy, right? In that sense. Yes, Tavan, what is your question? Yes, you are right. Yeah, you are right. Scientific rationality seems to be replacing philosophy, right? But then Kant would very interestingly, and that is very important, also point out the limitations of reason, right? And how does it do that? That is also very interesting. For him, he points out that nature, right, or whatever knowledge we can get is, say for example, going back to the example of pen. Yes, Jaldi, that is also true. Philosophy and science seems to be converging, right? As well as it's almost replacing. So there is a kind of shift between relation between science and philosophy, as if they are the same at the same time. But then science seems to be taking over philosophy at the same time. And you know what, that can even go back right up to Plato, where reason seems to displace all other kinds of things. But reasoning for Plato is, what should I say, philosophy itself, right? So there is no distinction between reasoning and philosophy. Okay. Very interestingly, now that we have mentioned Plato, Plato's philosophy is called idealism, right? And Kant's philosophy is also called idealism. It is called transcendental idealism. Why it is idealism? Because he is saying that faculty of knowing is important. That is central, right? Reason is central. That's why it's called idealism, and it is transcendental. But there is difference between Plato's idealism and Kant's idealism. And what is that difference is something that is very interesting. What Kant is saying, what Plato is saying, that the pen that I'm pointing out, this pen, right, is not real pen, though it exists. Going back to Plato, he is saying that this is not a real pen, right? Real pen is the word, is idea of your pen in your mind. That's what Plato is saying. So there is a difference between this pen and idea of the pen, right? So Plato's philosophy is called uh, dualism, a kind of dualism between the object and the idea. Am I making some sense? Plato is making a distinction between the bed that you see and the idea of bed which is real. These two are distinctive ontologically, right? For Kant, this distinction does not exist. For Kant, the idea of the bed and the bed that is in front of you is one and the same. He does not make a difference between the idea of the pen and the pen in front of you, right? And that is what one of the followers and critiques of Kant, called Hegel, says: what is rational is real and what is real is rational. I am repeating what Hegel has said. What is rational is real and what is real is rational. So this is ontological monism, while Plato's idealism is ontological dualism. That means this pen and the idea of the pen are two different things. For Kant and Hegel, or German idealism as it was called, these two things are one and the same. And how is it one and the same? Right? It is one and the same in the sense that he says that you can know this pen only to an extent that your transcendental faculty of reason allows you to know it. I am repeating what I have said. You can know this pen only to an extent that transcendental faculty of reason allows you to know it. That means you will never know this pen in itself. You will never know what this pen is in itself. You will only know this pen to an extent that your faculty of reason, transcendental faculty of reason, allows you to know it. Now tell me if you have not understood what I have said. I have repeated it twice. What is he saying? You can know this screen in front of you only to an extent to which your faculty of reason allows you to know it. So there are two aspects of this pen. One which I can know and one which I can never know. Right? So the aspect of this pen which I can know is called phenomena. And the aspect of this pen which I cannot know is called noumena.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what is, okay, so we wouldn't know the pen out of our faculty for Kant, right?
Right.
Right. So what is this noumena for Kant?
It is what he calls the thing in itself.
So he agrees that the thing exists beyond reasoning.
Yes. Yes. So that is the critique of pure reason, right? Pure reason can allow you to know a particular phenomena, right? But there is a dimension or an aspect of nature which you can never know. It is the thing in itself. So you will never know this pen in itself. You will only know the pen which your faculty of knowing allows you to know, right? The phenomena is knowable, noumena is not knowable. Is that clear, Jaldi?
Yes, sir. So is it like this idea of, I think, like Pratiksha pointed out previously, Plotinus, the idea of the one and the higher self and all that?
We will come to that. There is an influence of Neoplatonicism, though not directly. What
Alright.
connects Kant, Hegel, and German idealism with Platonicism is the whole question of idealism itself, right? And what is idealism? Idealism is ontological position which says that world is made up of ideas, right? World is not made up of matter. And if you say that this whole world is made up of matter or substance, you say it is materialism. So again, somebody brought in question of Aristotle. Aristotle is materialistic. Yeah, Jaldi? These people believe that pen has two sides, a knowable side and unknowable side. The knowable side is what I can know about this pen, called phenomena, right? Phenomenal existence of this pen. And the noumena is the thing in itself.
But sir, didn't even Aristotle point out that this is the materialistic, so the bed, for example, is the materialistic form, materialistic idea of
Substance. No,
substance.
what Aristotle did was make a distinction between primary substance and secondary substance. So this particular concrete experience of this pen is the primary substance. But
Right.
the fact that it belongs to a universal category called pen is the secondary substance,
Yes.
right?
He
So
also agreed upon the fact that upon Plato's idea that there exists a world of forms wherein we cannot reach materially, right? He did say that, Aristotle.
can you come again?
Aristotle, when he was discussing about this form and substance discussion, did somewhere agree that there exists a world of forms, as Plato
Yes,
called it, where
yes.
when
Means, of course, the universals exist, right? The forms exist, but that form does not exist independently of what
yes,
is
substance.
existing in front of you, right? It's not like that cave that there is a bird at the back and what you can see is only an illusion of that bird. So this is real. According what exists is real according to Aristotle. So Aristotle is realist and materialist, right? As compared to Plato, who seems to be idealist, right?
So,
Aristotle does not believe that the forms do not or cannot be accessed through senses. They have to access only through reason. ऐसी बात नहीं करते जो Plato कर रहा है. So there is a major difference between the two.
Yes, sir. Yes.
sir, am I audible? I have a doubt.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. In simpler words, can we say that pneumona is something that does not exist? It does not have real form. It is
No,
in our thoughts.
no, no. A very good question. That is something unknowable, right? Our reason can never reveal the thing in itself. And very interestingly, Kant puts God over there and something like human will. Will and God, these are the things which human beings can never know through reason. So in some ways, rescuing God because they exist in a free will, no, not free will, but will. exist in nominal domain.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Since we
So,
brought up
Saloni, have I answered your question? Thing exists, but we cannot know it.
Yeah, it exists, but we cannot know it. Okay, it's beyond our like beyond
Reasoning.
our faculty of reason. Okay.
Correct. Correct.
In Numona, can't we say, sir, abstract concepts fall into Numona? We can't say that then, right?
No, we'll come to that. Abstract concepts are categories, right? So that I will come to that. Right now, it doesn't mean that. Yeah. Any other questions?
yes,
No,
sir.
sir,
No,
got it.
not like atoms and subatomic particles. No, 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 no. He's not talking about that, Savan.
They weren't discovered back then, were they?
He's talking about that aspect of this pen which I can never understand. Nobody can ever understand. Is the pen in itself. I will only know the pen as the faculty of reasoning allows me to know. No, we cannot call them so because you can detect atoms and subatomic particles. Why this pen exists? No, 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 no. He's not going into those questions of causality right now. Okay. But is the distinction between phenomena and noumena clear?
Sir, if you can open the page number 364.
54.
364.
364, yeah.
Yeah, on the last paragraph,
Hmm.
third line,
Hmm.
he has explained the meaning of noumena. And
Hmm.
there it's written that its meaning is something thought or conceived.
Right. We can think of, for example, I can think of this pen but not know it. So there is an aspect of a thinkable aspect of this pen which I can never know. So he makes a distinction between
But it
sensible
is not
entities
knowable.
and intelligible entities. Page 364, last paragraph.
Okay, so we can say that it is thinkable, but it is not knowable.
Knowable. Of course, you can think of God and pen, right? Pen in
Yes, right.
itself can be thought of, but can never be known, which according to many critics of Kant is paradoxical. How did he know that there is an unthinkable or unknowable part of this pen? Right? That's a paradox. That's a
Yeah.
contradiction in Kant. So many critics of Kant have criticized this idea of this distinction between noumena and phenomena. The later critics of Kant. Right. So how does he know something which can never be known by definition? And I think this whole jugaad seems to be to preserve the idea of God some way.
Sir, I have a question on those lines.
Yeah.
So we talked about God, right? Since we
Hmm.
brought this concept of God in this discussion, it popped up in my head
Not
that
Kant brings in.
yeah, yes. So how did the church and the other religious authorities look upon this critique of pure reason, especially when he brought in God and all of that? Because
It was a mixed reaction, especially his critique of practical reason and other things. All because there is a kind of atheism somewhere in Kant's thought, right? And at the same time, he is also pointing out limitations of reason and existence of God. So people thought that he is not atheist. So there was a kind of contradictory response to Kant's philosophy. Right.
and the church didn't say anything, as in the church.
Church would have liked some of his ideas and did not like some of his ideas.
Yeah, that's why. Because at first when we started, I thought this was totally atheistic, and then when you mentioned that
Yes.
God in this, what was that word again? Noumena. Yes,
Now,
noumena. category. Now in a category, I was like, okay, it's not atheist. So that's why this question popped up.
Yeah, and some of the ideas by Kant regarding reason and state, his political ideas, did not go very down well even with the king, right, of Prussia where he was living. And so he was asked not to comment on certain things, right? So he had to be censored by the king at times, uh, right? So there was a kind of tension. And these people, both Kant and Hegel, had a kind of difficult relationship with Christianity. But what is important is that he has opened up a kind of can of worms. German idealism has opened up a can of worms called noumena and phenomena. That will become a very important point for later German idealism to develop. In a way, yes, Jay, that you have to develop your reasoning, but you should also know its limitations. But these limitations, you are right, Jay. We have to know rationally what are the limitations of reasoning, right? So there is an element of self-reflexivity involved here. Reasoning about reasoning, right? And very
Yes, sir.
often that ends up in paradoxical kind of things that you start saying, like noumena, right? So reasoning
Yeah.
about reasoning. So you are giving a reasoned account of what reason can do and cannot do. It's a critique of pure reason, right?
Yeah.
So it's a reason turning upon itself. That is one of the characteristics of modernity. That the critique of reason is also given on rational grounds, right?
Okay.
So in a way, coming back to the discussion on God, you are providing a rational justification of God. While God was to be largely understood in the terms of faith, right? That you should not question existence of God, you should believe in his existence. But what Kant is saying, that you should give a reasoned defense of why you should believe in God and not question his existence. So this is a typical Enlightenment approach to religion. People are trying to defend religion on rational grounds. And one of the points that we made in the beginning, that one of the features of modernity is that traditional things are to be defended on modern grounds. So you might have heard people say, I do yoga because I want to remain fit and treat my stress, right? Or you might say
The
that
meaning
people
of
are,
yoga has changed.
yeah,
I think the meaning of yoga has changed according to the time.
exactly. And that is the modern justification for tradition.
Yeah.
And that is I'm saying the same thing that you are saying, Jai.
Yeah.
Right? So meaning of God has changed here in Kant.
Yeah.
So God has to be justified on rational grounds. Why you should believe in God? Now, belief and faith is not rational thing, right? He is trying to justify belief and faith on rational grounds.
Okay. Understood.
And that is the modern aspect of religion. So there is a modernization of religion that happened during Enlightenment, and typical example of that is Kant.
So you understand the scientific meaning of all the rituals and all the religious practices.
Yes, people try to provide scientific justification for rituals which did not have a scientific justification.
Yeah.
Right. So rituals had to be defended on scientific grounds. Right. So that is modern about, that is what is modern about Kant's idea of religion.
Okay.
So he is not really giving Christian uh, uh, idea of God here. It's an enlightenment idea of God, modern idea of God. That because God exists in noumena, you can never know God by reasoning, right? And so consequently, you have to just accept his existence.
And when you will accept it, then you will have a real kind of faith.
Or that's what was believed.
Yeah.
And yes, what Stavan says also is right. It starts overtaking religion, right? Very fact that you are defending God's existence and faith on rational grounds proves that rational grounds are more important than faith. Right, Stavan? So rationality has overtaken religion, and that is precisely why it has to be justified on rational grounds. You are fasting, but you don't say I'm fasting because it's a ritual. I am fasting because I want to keep myself fit, right? You give a kind of modern justification of fitness to fasting. Very good. Okay, there is one difficult idea which I am not going to dwell into, and that is that the phenomenal world. Can you see what I am sharing? Am I present? Can you see what I am sharing?
Yes.
Yeah. And the phenomenal world is the domain of synthetic a priori, and it is internal to phenomenal world, right? And that's why it is called, Kant calls it immanent metaphysics. Let's not go into that. Let's look at an important aspect of this, which is directly connected to understanding of art and literature, right? And what do you know by transcendental idealism? Let's look at it a bit closely. What he means here is that our faculty of understanding, right? And sensibility means our faculty of senses, right? Not to be understood in modern sense. Uh, Sensibility means faculty of sensing something. Uh, so if you look at the pen here, then pen, light that falls on the pen goes to my eyes, right? And my eyes have sensibility. Uh, right? So light falls in. Sensibility means that which is made up of senses, right? And there is an concept of pen in my mind, in the faculty of understanding, which has the concept, right? So concepts exist here in our understanding of something, right? While sensibility is our senses. So not to be confused with something else. Sensibility is sense experiences. So what happens when I see this pen is that light falls on it, it's reflected to my eyes. My eye is just sense organ, right? It sends this data to my mind, which has understanding. And in the mind, there is a concept called pen. So this data matches with this concept of pen. So suppose you are living in the heart of Africa where there is no pen, you don't have a concept of pen, you won't be able to recognize this object, right? Because there is no concept of pen. with me so far? Is it clear? This is
Yes.
how
Would you please repeat what do you mean by sensibility? Once.
sensibility means my faculty of knowing things through senses: eyes, touch, smell, taste. That is the older meaning of sensibility. Stavan, stay with the example. Don't go in some other direction, right? So this pen, I can know this pen because of sensibility giving sensory data and my mind giving concept, right, of pen. And they come together and I know that this is a pen. Now the sensory data is transformed by a faculty called imagination. That is Kant's words, right? Into a form, right? And this form is understood imagination transforms sense data in form. Can you see what I am writing here? Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
So mind has understanding, which gives concepts. Imagination transforms this sensory data, right? So this is the object pen. This goes to sensibility, right? Which has the sensory data, and that is transformed into form by imagination. And mind has a concept called pen, and that is how I know that this is pen, right? So imagination is one of the faculties of mind which transforms sensory data into form, and this form matches with the concept, and all this happens in microsecond, right? We are talking of something which is very fast. To use a contemporary term, this cognitive process happens very fast, right? How do I know this is pen? Whenever I see this pen, it's pen, right? So split of a second. But in split of a second, light on this pen is reflected on my eyes. Sensibility gives sensory data, is transformed into a form, and this form is matches with the concept of pen. This is how I understand pen. Know that this is pen. Is it clear? Any questions about how I know this pen? Not a very difficult thing to understand, right?
No, sir, clear.
Yeah. So what happens is that there is a kind of shared ground, right, between human mind and the object, which is transcendental. There is purposiveness, which makes knowing possible. This purposiveness, which is common to our mind and this object, which is beyond this mind and object, right? This purposiveness recognizes that this pen's purpose. So knowing that this is a pen, according to Kant, is knowing the purpose of this pen, right? Why is this pen here? And the purpose of this pen is to write. So you know, knowing something is knowing its purpose, right? And that is because of our faculty, which is transcendental, has this agreement between this object and my mind. So what happens is that whenever you see a beautiful painting, say for example of an apple, what happens is that you know it is an apple, but it is not an apple. Right. Am I making some sense? When you see the still life painting of the apple, you know it is an apple or banana, but you also know that it is not an apple or banana. Yeah. Yeah, Jay.
So, is this understanding, imagination, and sensibility part of the mind itself, or
Yes, yes,
it's
yes, yes, yes. So this is part of mind,
right?
right?
Because there are
And
three faculties. Because
right,
our
right.
imagination comes from our emotion, so that's different.
No, no, not emotions. Imagination doesn't come from emotion. It's a distinctive faculty of mind that transforms the sensory data into form,
I
right?
think then
Which are
visualization comes
recognized.
from emotion.
No, it is a distinctive faculty of mind. What has that got to do with emotion? We have not
Okay.
yet brought emotions into this picture at all.
Yeah. Understood.
We will bring it, right? Yeah, Jalti. What did
Am
उस
I
तवन
audible?
बहुत आगे निकल जाता है वैसे डायरेक्ट 20th स्टेप पे जाता है stay with us. Yes, jaldi. What is the question?
Uh, yes. So, sir, what about those objects which we have, I mean, which the individuals in that era might have seen, but do not know the function of them? What happens to those objects?
So you try to find out its function or purpose, right? That is what science is all about. Why is there nitrogen on moon? You want to find out the function of my nitrogen on moon. That's the whole scientific enterprise about. You have two kidneys. Why do you have two kidneys,
Yeah,
right?
not, yeah.
That's what scientific rationality was about.
Sir,
Okay.
on
Hmm.
Stavan's question, I know you said ki it is not in the historical context. Lekin these people also might have had basic human emotions, right? And Kant
मैं
might
emotions पे जा रहा हूँ जरा रुकिए.
have. अच्छा, ठीक.
We have not reached. So I am going step by step, right?
Yes, yes. I just
The
yes.
questions of imagination I will bring in. Don't worry.
All right, sir.
So what happens when you see not the pen, but sunset? What happens is that you see sunset, right? It's transformed by, it is detected by sensibility and given to imagination. Imagination gives it form. But there is no concept called beautiful. According to Kant, there is no such concept called beautiful. Right? So what happens is that you don't understand it, but this goes to somewhere else. It goes to the word that is coming up constantly. It goes to emotions. Instead of going to understanding, beautiful sunset evokes an emotional response instead of conceptual response. Am I making sense? This is what Kant is talking about. Right? So artistic objects have aesthetic response or emotional response because of this transcendental faculty of purposiveness. Which is uh, beyond mind and object. Does this make sense? There is purposiveness, but sunset does not have any purpose. There is no concept. And so, beauty, according to Kant, is purposiveness without purpose. That's the classical definition given by Kant on page 371. Last paragraph. Kant has used the term purposiveness to refer to the ways in which, okay, I'm sorry, where is that? Where is the definition? Okay, it's on 373. Page 373. Beauty is the form. Have you found that place? This is the last point for today. Page 373. Beauty is the form of purposiveness of the object so far as this is perceived without any representation of purpose. So that is Kant's definition of beauty. That you can never have conceptual understanding of what beauty is, but it's a response, emotional response, rather than a conceptual response to something, right? This is something that is common to all human beings. All human beings have this emotional response, right? All human beings have a faculty of responding to beautiful objects, but it is not the same as rational faculty of understanding something conceptually, right? And that's why he calls it subjective universal faculty of knowing, or aesthetic faculty is common to all human beings and is universal and subjective at the same time. That's for today. There are other complex ideas that we'll go into, but this is his definition of beauty. Yes, Smith, exactly. So all the questions about emotions आ गए यहाँ पे? Yes, Taman, go ahead.
So, sir, as you said that there is a difference between Kant's idealism and Plato's idealism. So, can we say that, as you mentioned, that if we see, a beautiful sunset, then it comes to us by some, subject universal. But for Plato, the very idea of beauty was something that was concrete, and every other thing was like, falling under it. So, like beauty and something good or tall were all universal. But for Kant, it was reversed. That it was like we process it, and Kant actually, I guess we can say embrace subjectivity and
Universal.
Yes, universe. But Plato was very stubborn that everybody, like for example the division of labor.
Plato उससे 1500 साल पहले हो गया.
No, sir, but in the starting you said that like he developed on the idea of Platonism. In the starting you said that.
Yeah, it is idealistic, but there are fundamental differences between Plato's idealism and Kant's idealism.
Right. So
right?
like
Plato is running down sunset. उसके लिए ये inferior sunset है. Ideal beauty तो दिमाग में होती है कहीं पे. Right?
Yes, and Kant said that it is we who process the beauty. Like we understand if something is beautiful, then it's beautiful.
Right. And purposiveness है, इसी वजह से आप beautiful universal हो जाता है.
So
but
that's
purpose क्या है वो पता नहीं है. Purposiveness is a transcendental faculty. All human beings have it because it is beyond mind and object.
So, sir,
right?
where you said that will comes into play. Kant mentioned about will, the purposiveness.
Not here. It will be more important in his critique of practical reason. वो भी हम discuss करेंगे. To show what kind of judgment is the judgment this is beautiful. If you have to make this kind of judgment that this painting is beautiful or this sunset is beautiful, आपको क्या करना पड़ेगा, right? And that is a separate conversation which we will have tomorrow because we have run out of time. But anything that you have to say till now? So how many of you found this difficult and interesting at the same time? Not sure whether I understand it or I don't understand it. Okay. Okay, far more interesting than all the thinkers studied until now. Okay. And if you are bored by this, please feel free to be bored as well, because these are technical, abstract, conceptual thoughts or thinking, and we are not used to this kind of thinking. But one thing is sure, that even if you struggle feeling bored about it, you are intellectually developed compared to not trying, right? Because after all, intellectual development is the development of thinking abstractly. Yeah. Okay. So what we will do tomorrow, if you have any doubts about whatever we have discussed, and if you're not understood, this video will be there, right? And earlier class video is also there. You can watch it, find out what are the things that you have not understood, and we can discuss it, right? Yes. And you know what? Your muscles develop when you pick up challenging things. If you play chess with 1 year old, your chess game won't be stronger. You may defeat your opponent, right? Even if you play chess with 4th standard kid and defeat him. Your game improves when you try to play with people who are superior to you in the game. Only then your game improves. So the difficulty and challenge that you face is to be seen in this light. Okay. So you can act. अरे भाई मैं मेटाफर्स और इलिस्ट्रेशंस दे रहा हूँ. श्रवण को मैंने कहा कि वो अफ्रीका में जिनके पास पेन नहीं है तो वो रिकॉग्नाइज, तो वो बोला इन्वेंट कर सकते हैं कि नहीं. डोंट बी टू लिटरल, दीज आर एग्जांपल्स. चेस नहीं तो दूसरा कोई गेम, क्रिकेट. एंड इफ यू हेट क्रिकेट तो कोई और गेम. Okay, so let's stop for today, and we will meet tomorrow, right? The videos are there.